Welcome to the Books of Titans podcast hosted by Eric Rostad. Join him on his 15-year journey through the immortal books. He'll share what he's learning, explore profound ideas across time and cultures, and share the one thing he always hopes to remember from each immortal book.
This is my fifth episode covering this year's straight read-through of the Bible. I'm currently making my way through Volume 3. So the Bible I'm using this year, it's a set of different Bibles. I started off with the Intertextual Tanakh, and that covered the first volume, which was the 5 books of Moses and the former prophets. And then I'm using the Bibliotheca version for the other 4 volumes. And those 4 volumes are the latter prophets, the writings, the Apocrypha, and the New Testament. So I'm in Volume 3, which is the writings, and that includes Psalms, Proverbs, Job, Song of Songs, Book of Ruth, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, Esther, Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, and the Book of Chronicles. So right now I'm in the middle of the Book of Daniel. So I've read the books prior to that, and then have Ezra, Nehemiah, and the Book of Chronicles to go in the writings. So each week during this process, I've been sharing what has stuck out in the previous week's reading. And so I want to continue that practice. It's been a lot of fun, and it's just kind of fun to stop for a moment and look at what are things that I've been tracking through this entire reading. So kind of overarching ideas, but then also what just stuck out in the week before. What's something that surprised me or just hit me in a unique way. And that's one of the coolest things about the Bible is different things pop out each year. And it might just be from life circumstances, or it just might be something that happens to stick out that year that didn't in previous years or previous readings of the Bible. So that's why I'm doing this, and I love highlighting it. It helps me to just kind of consolidate what I've been learning, and I find sharing it just helps me to remember things as well. So I covered part of the Psalms last week, but I'm going to start off here, and I'll just go kind of book by book in what stood out this past week. But so I'll cover a few things in the latter parts of the Psalms that I finished during this past week. The first thing is a psalm that says, "He heals the broken in heart, and he binds up their wounds." And that has been something, that's been a verse that has come to mind recently over the last few years, where maybe I hear of a tragedy, or I know people who experienced a tragedy, and it's so bad that it's hard to think about it, especially if like a parent has lost their child. And the only comfort, the only thing that helps is that verse, that he, being God, heals the broken in heart and binds up their wounds. That promise is something that it's like the last bit of hope in these just horrible, dire situations, that there is a God that heals the broken in heart and binds up their wounds. It's just kind of the last stop, the hope that indeed is true. One other thing that stuck out in the Psalms this past week is where it talks about idols, and it says, "Those who make them shall be like them." And it's just such an interesting idea. And sometimes it's hard for me to think, what are our idols now? But just even thinking about things that we do where we become like those things. And just that idea of an idol, where the person making an idol actually begins to take on the qualities and be like them. It's such an interesting way of thinking about an idol. Next up was the book of Job. I always have trouble with this book. I know Job's friends may mean well, but they say pretty awful things to him, but they also say some things that are true. So it's always, I just always struggle with this book. I need to sit down one year and just really dig into it more, maybe read some commentaries along with the book of Job. But one part that stuck out was when God speaks to Job at the end of the book, and he asks Job this: "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy?" I'll stop reading it there. I love that part, and this came up a few times in the reading from this past week. But this idea of a song, in here, who laid its cornerstones when the morning stars sang together. I love that imagery, just of stars singing together. I'm in a musical right now. I'm playing violin in a musical called Hadestown, and there's this idea that there's a song that can be written that makes everything new again, or rights all the wrongs, sets the world back in tune, sets the world back in order. I just really love that imagery of a song being able to do something like that. So that's what stood out in the book of Job this past week. In the book of Ruth, if you've listened to some of the other episodes that I've been doing about these Bible reading progress updates, you'll know that one of the questions I'm tracking during this reading is, are there individuals who go against the grain? We get to books like Kings, where the direction of the kingdoms of Israel and the kingdoms of Judah, the directions are not going in the right way, and in over and over we see there's no one who does good, there's no one who does right, and so I just have this kind of continual question: is it possible for an individual to go against the direction of a society when that society is heading in the wrong direction? And what does that look like? What are examples that we have in the Bible? And it's just interesting because we keep seeing that there's no one good, there's no one righteous, but we see some examples in the book of Ruth. I mean, this is a book dedicated to an example, and it's Ruth, and she's from Moab, so she's not even from the kingdom of Israel. And so I just found that to be interesting, that here's an individual that kind of went against her societal norms, decided to stay with Naomi and go with her back to Israel. And she's not even, she's from Moab. So, yeah, there's an example of an individual and one that I've been looking for. All right, next up to the book of Lamentations. Lamentations is thought to have been written by Jeremiah. So this is lamenting the exile and the destruction of Jerusalem, where the people of Judah were taken to Babylon. And here is a part about prophets and how you can tell a false prophet. And it says this: your prophets have seen for you false and foolish visions. They have not uncovered your iniquity. End quote. I thought that last part there, they have not uncovered your iniquity. If a prophet is not able to identify the areas of iniquity or sin, they may be a false prophet, or they're sharing foolish visions. The next and last thing here that stood out in Lamentations, it talks about hardness of heart being a curse. And hardness of heart, we see that come up quite a bit in the book of Exodus, where the heart of Pharaoh is hardened. And here it says that is a curse. Next up was the book of Ecclesiastes. Also, it also says this is a book called Colette. And I really enjoyed this book during this read-through. I don't recall this book having as much of an impact. I remember my brother-in-law, Dr. Jason Staples, he said during COVID that this book just really spoke to him, and he really enjoyed it during that time. And for some reason, this book just, I don't know, it just really stuck out this year. I really enjoyed it. If you listen to the episode where I was talking about Deuteronomy 30 really stuck out this year. So I would say of the two biggest things that or books or chapters that have stood out, it's been Deuteronomy chapter 30, and then the entire book of Ecclesiastes. I really connected with it this year and loved reading through it. Here is one part, and again, this ties into what I was sharing earlier about Ruth. Here's a line that says, "Surely there is not a righteous man upon the earth who does good and does not sin." And so again, we have this example of Ruth. I thought that was a neat comparison to that quote. And then also, if we go back to the book of Job, there's a contrast with Job, because Job is described on the very first page as a perfect and an upright man, one who fears God and turns away from evil. And so in this kind of quest of looking through the Bible here and seeing, are there individuals who are against the there's no righteous man. Here, Job is described as that. So I found that to be a fun counterpoint and way to think about that. After that, the Book of Esther. Book of Esther is always one of my favorites. A couple of things that stuck out this year was just how quickly a change at the political level can impact and change the direction of an entire people, and you see that very clearly here. Book of Esther this year. Also, I kept thinking back to a book that was given to me by Dr. Russ Roberts, and he's the one who gave me that the intertextual Tanakh this year that I read through, and that must have been 2022, he gave me a book called The Dawn by Yoram Hazony. And that is a book about Esther, but it's a really interesting take on the book of Esther and through the lens of power. And so the author of that book kind of looks at Esther and just saying like, this is through the lens of power. This is look at the book of Esther through the lens of political power, and it was just a really interesting read, and so it was fun. As I was reading Esther this year, that some of the ideas from that book kept coming back as I was reading through it. Just something that I enjoy, that things that I read during the years can come back when I access a text again. After Esther is the book of Daniel. I'm midway through this book. I've just gotten into where he's having dreams. But the first part, I wanted to highlight a few things that stuck out. And the first thing is just on the very first page of the book of Daniel. It says this, and the king spoke, and this is King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon when it says, and the king. So that says, and the king Nebuchadnezzar spoke to Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, and that he should bring in of the children of Israel, even of the royal seed and of the nobles, youths in whom there was no blemish, but good to look upon, and skillful in all wisdom, and endued with knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability to stand in the king's palace. And here's the key part I want to highlight, and that he should teach them the literature and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And I'll stop reading it there. So to set the stage here, Daniel is part of the group of exiles from Judah, and he has been exiled to Babylon, and King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon is telling his master of the eunuchs, he said, let's bring in of the children of Israel, even of the royal seed and of the nobles, youths, and then youths who are already skillful in wisdom, but then we are going to teach them the literature and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And I thought that was really interesting because the literature of the Chaldeans would be things like Gilgamesh and the Enuma Elish. And there was also a book that was called The Poem of the Righteous Sufferer, and it's called the Babylonian Job. So it's a book that's similar to Job, but these are the things that amongst others, but the things that they would have been taught, the literature that they would have been taught. And I just think that's amazing. With Gilgamesh, we just got Gilgamesh within the last 200 years. It was like in the 1850s or something that tablet was found in. And so it was written 4,000 years, or put down on tablets 4,000 years ago. And we just got it back after more than 1,000 years of having lost it. And here, so now we're able to read the Epic of Gilgamesh, the same book that Daniel was likely also able to read and was trained in as part of this literature. I just find that stuff really cool to even think about that. Like Daniel has read some of the same stuff that I've read. I love that. Next up, I want to read a little part here. And this is where Daniel keeps getting sought after by the kings who have dreams, and none of their people can decipher the dreams. And so Daniel gets called in, and he becomes known as someone who can decipher these dreams. And so in the middle of when he's talking about what this dream means for the king, he says this, and in the days of those kings shall the God of the heavens set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall its sovereignty be left to another people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. End quote. It's amazing. I mean, it's talking about something that will be eternal here, and he's responding to this king's dream. But the God of the heavens shall set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. Just a really cool thing there. Then at towards the end of where I finished reading, Daniel is described as someone with an excellent spirit. And if you remember in my progress update number 2, I was talking about how Joshua and Caleb were continually described as having good spirits. And it's one of those overarching things I'm kind of tracking just to see who in the Bible does it say has a good spirit. And here we see Daniel is described as someone having an excellent spirit. And we saw that also with Joshua and Caleb earlier on. Those are the things that stuck out this past week. I have fallen behind in reading. I am part of this musical this week, Hadestown. My daughter's in it, and then I'm playing the violin. So we've had a number of practices, and just with work and everything else going on, I've fallen a little bit behind. So right now I'm 1,523 pages in to a total of 2,823 pages of the Bible. Again, I'm trying to finish it between January and February of this year. So right now I'm 54% complete, but we are 73% into those 2 months. So I'm behind. Right now, what I've actually been reading is 35 pages per day between January and this day in February. I need to be at 48 pages per day. So in order to finish, I need to be reading 81 pages per day. That will be hard, but I'm still trying to get there. So after the writings, I have the Apocrypha and the New Testament remaining. I want to close off this episode reading part of Lamentations, one part here that really stuck out. So here we go. This I recall to my mind, therefore I have hope. Yahweh's loving kindnesses surely are not consumed. Surely his compassions do not fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Yahweh is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. Yahweh is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that a man should hope and quietly wait for the salvation of Yahweh. I'll stop reading there. Thank you for listening. That's going to do it for this episode. You can follow Books of Titans on Instagram or Twitter, just at Books of Titans. You can also go to the website, booksoftitans.com. That will lead you to my Substack, where you can sign up to receive new podcast episodes, and those come out every Friday, and then I do a article every Tuesday. Next week, I'm going to focus for my article for sure, and possibly for the podcast, I want to focus on Hadestown, the musical. There are so many Hadestown, the plot is a take on some Greek mythology, and the Greek mythology follows the love stories of Orpheus and Eurydice, and then also Persephone and Hades. And I am seeing so many connections. I mean, it's just been fun to be reading the Bible as I've been getting deep into this Hadestown musical. And then I got a book about Hadestown and how it was put together by the person who wrote it. And it's just utterly fascinating in the levels of myth, the connections with the Bible, the unintended connections with the Bible and mythology. I mean, the mythology is intended, but deep. I mean, this play in musical is so deep. I want to go into that and highlight some of those parts of it. And so I'm really looking forward to that. So that'll be in the article for sure. I may do a podcast episode about that as well. The next 3 nights will be the performances of Hadestown here in Franklin, Tennessee. If you are in town, please come. It's just an incredible musical. I will buy your ticket if you don't cry. How about that? You can follow Books of Titans. I'll be back next week, either with the Hadestown episode or another Bible progress update. Until then, keep reading, keep learning, and keep listening. I'm out.